Is it surprising for you guys that the job security for NBA coaches feels more tenuous than NFL at this point? We're taping this the same day. Obviously, Mike Malone got fired in Denver. And we've had 3 coaches in the last 5 years who've won championships who've then lost their job.
Yeah, coach of the year used to be the real kiss of death.
Yeah.
Because you went through it and it's like every coach of the year, like the last 10, they're gone within 2 or 3 years. It's a really good question because now teams, I think, knowing how much money they're making on the new TV deal, the cap is spiking nice year to year. So clearly, and look, that revenue is locked in for the most part. I mean, we talk about the year to year operational stuff, but that TV money, it does feel like teams like Detroit had to get rid of Monty because it was just, I think it's one of the worst coaching jobs. And the fact that they're this much better this year, granted they have more spacing and K took it up to another level, but they paid that guy so much money and they knew they couldn't come back with him and they just ate it. I don't know if that happens 10 years ago. They bring in Vogel and they're like, we're done. So I think the turnover, the eating the dead money on the coaches is like nothing we've ever seen before. And maybe it's just, hey, we know this isn't working now. We're not going to ride out another year and make all these players miserable. Again, I'm talking as an outsider, so I don't know what you would say to that, Duncan.
Yeah, I mean I think the Malone one and the Taylor Jenkins one were both uniquely surprising. The Malone one specifically, I mean they had a run to defend their title last year, and then they're gearing up for another one, and he doesn't even get the chance to do it. Stuff will probably come out. I don't know what the inner turmoil was of that dynamic, and it maybe got to a point where it just wasn't going to work. I do think a big part of this is higher ups, front offices, or ownership looking at star players and looking at windows and looking at how do I maximize this time when this guy's on the roster. Because now you see so much player movement with the best players. If you get a disgruntled player, you're looking at a media shitstorm. You got guys like Ryan going on his podcast saying all sorts of stuff. You got guys asking out, and then you're looking at a full rebuild, from
That'd
there.
be a great show. The Ask Out rankings justified. Rankings based on justification.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, well, Giannis, I could kind of see maybe after this year. Yeah. Or then you're like, Durant, before the 4-year extension kicks in.
Well, here's the question, and I think we've all sort of talked about this individually, and you guys, we all sort of see different sides of this. You have to see this in the locker room to a certain extent. We have to see it in shows, media, whatever it may be. There's so much whispering all the time. Then this, to me, feels like this is NBA specific more than other sports. And maybe it's the length of contracts. There's probably a bunch of different reasons for it. But there's so much whispering all the time about people being unhappy. And sometimes people are unhappy. It's true. But there's also like a team goes on a 2-game losing streak. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, they want out. And so it creeps into everybody's brain of like, okay, we need to fire Taylor Jenkins because Ja's going to ask out. Like Ja didn't ask out. Maybe he would have.
Oh, you're totally right.
But it's a total hypothetical that is based off no factual thing that has happened. And so I wonder if like the way our cycle is now, it just creates a thing. I was thinking about with the culture conversation, because like one of the things with the Heat is like they got the same people running the show. So they'll trade Jimmy if it gets to that point, but like they are going to do what they have to do, and they're not going to be like swayed by, 7 people starting a sort of like narrative online, and then it becomes like a thing that crescendos.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the interesting one was the Grizzlies won it first. And when that happened, there was like this collective shock, at least internally. Like we were all looking at like, what just happened. And this kind of ties back into what I was saying about maximizing a window, is that if you have a coach and you don't think for whatever reason it's not working, especially now with how many great coaches there are available in an off season, I can sort of, I don't really understand why Taylor Jenkins was fired, but I can sort of at least see the logic of, all right, this isn't going to work. Maybe we have somebody that we just brought in from Europe who we believe in. could be a great coach in the guy Tomas who took over. Let's give him a trial run before just giving him the keys in the summer, because who knows how that goes. And then we end up, if that doesn't work, then we end up firing him a year later. So, I can at least wrap my mind around that from a logical standpoint, but it's just turned into a carousel at this point where now you're going to get teams firing coaches because of Mike Malone's available, because of Taylor Jenkins is available, arguably prematurely. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling thing where I don't know when this necessarily stops or slows down.
The Jenkins one is strange just because it's like, all right, you brought in this new system. When they blast out, like the thing we should all pay attention to is, oh, wait, all of Jenkins' assistants were blasted out. Then they brought in all these new people. And apparently, maybe we learned more about it after the fact, but like, it was like, hey, these are your assistants. And this is what the front office wants to run. And there was just a low priority of screens. Ja being in the corner doesn't make any sense because he can't shoot. So if you have Ja and you're catering the franchise to Ja, as much as people would want to push back on the idea of doing that, that's what teams are doing when they think they have somebody special. And so I think ownership is very pro Ja there. And, I don't think it's been a great Ja year based on availability. Like his high moments are still incredibly high. Like he can totally take over games. Like I was in love with that dude when he was younger and the trajectory that we thought he was on. And I'm not even getting into the off the court stuff or whatever, but like just watching the basketball part of it. They were still winning enough games, but they weren't beating anybody good. And that move from the offseason to blast out his staff and replace it with like an offense that they were like, you're going to run this because the assistants want it. Like that means they already thought he wasn't the guy.
Yeah. And
they were going to wait for that stretch where it's like, okay, once again, if you look through the top 6 teams at the time in the West, the last time I looked at it when it happened, they were like 11-18 against the 500 better teams. It was the worst record of those top. So they're probably going like, hey, we're not beating anybody good. And we installed an offense here. Like, that's what was so strange about it. It's like, we made you run this offense that maybe the head coach didn't even really want to run. It didn't seem like the star wanted to run. So now we'll get rid of the head coach. But now they're keeping, one of the assistants was also let go. And then this assistant ran a lot of the same system stuff, apparently, because Sam Decker was tweeting about it. It was like, well, if Ja didn't like Taylor's system, like, Tomas, this is kind of the system that he had used. So I have no idea if he's a good coach or not, but there's a lot of basketball stuff that gets ignored when the decision is made. And I think there are all these preemptive things that you'll hear about, like, hey, why do you do that with this guy? We never want to be able to say, like, down the road that we didn't cater to his every whim. And you just hope the guy that you're catering to is somebody that gets it enough that is going to give you what you need from the supposed face of your franchise. The problem is when you have some of these franchises catering to dudes, you're like, that guy's a third option on a really good team. But since he's your best option, now he thinks he's the man. And you, like, I think some of the stuff that happened with Westbrook and OKC, they were so happy that he stayed when Durant left that everything was catered to him. And then he's like, well, I get the ball every time. I'm putting up crazy numbers. I win an MVP. It's almost like, wow, the guy who stayed, like, it's so celebrated. And it's like, yeah, but what are you like? And I know his numbers are sick and people are going to tell me I'm wrong about it, but it's like, if he's your one, even in his prime, like, you're playing a very, very specific basketball that's never really worked in the playoffs.
Yeah. We're talking about these like tight windows and managing egos of star players and wants and needs. I do think there's a role that media has played in this, and just the current culture of fandom that has been cultivated plays in this as well. We were talking the other day internally as a team, and some of the older guys were talking about how you used to be able to go like stretches of bad games and just nobody would really say anything. And then now it's like you have like one bad game
clip,
and people are just
hater central
on your
ass
head about it. Like, whether it be the sports betting fans, whether it be like, media, whatever it is, like, and it's such a highly opinionated dynamic where everyone's opinion is so readily available. And it is actually, what's crazy is people can say, well, it doesn't matter. It's media, talking heads, this, that, and whatever. But it's actually shifting narratives to the point where it's shifting decision-making. And I do think stuff like this, like head coaches getting fired, is actually a symptom of this in and of itself.
I mean, here's hypothetical. I don't know if you talked about this other thing you taped today. If Denver doesn't lose that crazy game to Minnesota the other night where they smoke the layup and then foul at the end, and they don't go on this losing streak, is this guy the coach till June? Probably. But like the amount of shit they got after that game becomes like, are they?
No, you might be right. I mean, right, because it feels so immediate. Like I always joked about like baseball, and we'll stay on this, Tommy, because I think you're on to something. But like, I worked for my first thing I did in sports, I worked for a AA baseball team. And I went from like super fan.
Trenton Thunder?
Yeah. And I was like obsessed about everything Red Sox. And here it is, it's a AA Red Sox. And like they'd get swept by the Binghamton Mets or something. And the guys would be like out an hour after they showered, like across the street. Young guys, minor league guys. And I'd be like, how come you guys like aren't home sulking? Like, and they'd be like, are you serious? We have like 100, I don't know, AA, like 120 of these fucking things. We never have a day off. Like, see you tomorrow, like we can't be on the emotional swing that a fan would be. Again, I don't know how many super passionate Trenton Thunder fans were out there like every day checking the standings. But then once I got to Boston and I'd be just talking about the Red Sox every single day on the radio show. And I used to, when I was younger, I would go into the locker room and I would see the media scrum because I just wanted to see it. We almost got thrown out because they were like, well, who are these kids in here? But we actually had media passes. We were allowed to see it. And the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, so the best player, the cleanup hitter, goes 0 for 4, 0 for 4 running scoring position, like has a shitty night, which is going to happen so many times over the course of a baseball season. And there's 10 reporters sticking a microphone in front of his face being like, hey, what was it about tonight? And he's going to sit there and be like, well, just didn't see it great off. And they're like, what does this mean about this team? It's like, I don't fucking know. It may not mean anything, and it probably doesn't. And I thought like maybe baseball people should only have access like once a week. Or if somebody throws a no-hitter, like now you can talk to him. What could you possibly learn 162 nights knowing the randomness of baseball? And to your point of like, when something happens, it has to be something now, right? Because every night, like if you had this Saturday game on ABC or something and I was in the studio, then I'd really only be talking about like whether or not Duncan Robinson was good. Yeah. And if you were terrible, it'd be like, hey, could he even be in the rotation? You're like, dude, you just ignored Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. There is something to that. I think that every night there has to be a reaction because everyone is in content now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's actually one of my gripes with, sports media in general and media coverage and availability.
Like when you're out of the rotation, right? Like it seems like your career's over.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, well, rightfully so. Like as the individual, of course, and we're all competitive people, like we actually do feel that. But when you've been around a little bit, like you build a little more resolve to sort of like understand, all right, like this kind of comes and goes, and this is part of what, playing in this league is, because it's a brutally, competitive league. But you're right. I mean, there is always a reaction to everything all the time. And I don't know that reaction always needs to be covered or consumed. Like, I don't know, but it always is. I guess there's a positive to that, is that
people care this much, and that's why you guys make all the money you make. Of course,
right? That's a part of it. And like this sort of business side of the game, like the media coverage, we're all beneficiaries of it to a great extent. And it's part of why, I mean, especially you get to this point of the year and there's really only, 16 teams or so that are actually looking at the opportunity to play in the playoffs. The rest of the teams are engaged in this sort of other business of basketball. What does it look like with lottery odds? What is it? It's keeping everybody engaged in the product, which is an important piece. But there are pitfalls to it.